that from a design perspective, it doesn't feel the need to shout to the world, hey everyone, I'm special because I'm an EV. Come on, it's a BYD. Surely the build quality is pretty rubbish and it's probably got no resilience to it, right?
Now, I'm guessing some of you out there are going to think the fact that it's Chinese and it's an EV, you're just going to assume that it's utter rubbish. Well, actually, you might be surprised.
I reckon this thing off the line in a straight line could embarrass a whole lot of cars that identify as performance vehicles. You might see this as just another innocent little crossover SUV thing. But if you listen to the critics, which is generally people that have never driven one and probably never will, apparently these are a nightmare of build quality issues, the depreciation and ownership costs are horrendous, and they should be avoided at all costs, especially on the used market. But surely it can't be all that bad because the Atto 3 has been one of the highest selling EVs in Australia. So I think we all need to know what is actually going on here. And should you ever seriously consider buying one? Well, before we answer those questions and so many more, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this car, like what goes wrong with it. Let's start with the exterior. Just before we get into this, I need to apologise to you about the audio. We've done as much as we possibly can with AI, but the cicadas the day we filmed this were going absolutely crazy. Let's hope they disappear toot sweet. Anyway, back to the cicadas. I mean, the BYD Atto 3. Well, you know what? According to those that actually own these, including those that use them for ride sharing and taxis, not a whole lot goes wrong with the exterior. Okay, there's the occasional owner out there that has reported weird electrical gremlins like lights playing up, but generally the car fixes itself. If you turn the car off and turn it back on, that can fix it. And the over-the-air updates also fix it. And even then, we're talking incredibly sporadic reports, not common at all. A few owners have mentioned that the actual panels are a little bit on the thin side. This might be BYD's attempt to drop some weight because EVs are renowned for being quite heavy vehicles, but the problem is apparently the panels can dent pretty easily. Now this next complaint from owners isn't a fault as such, it's just something to be aware of. The door's lower edge is incredibly low, so if you park up against an incline, it can make it challenging to get in and out of the car. Although, what it does, it stops the lower sill of the car getting dirty, so when you get in and out, you don't dirty your pants or your frock. Also, the boot release and the camera are located really low, so these can get dirty in about 10 minutes worth of driving. Now, another issue these cars can have, in fact, this one is having this exact problem, the windscreen wiper blades can wear prematurely. Luckily, there's a really easy fix for that. It's getting some Wipertech wiper blades. Wipertech wiper blades are so easy to order online. They're a breeze to fit and they work so well. We genuinely use them on all of our cars. They're a great Aussie company and we bloody love them. And if you order yourself a set via the link down there, you're gonna get 15% off and free express shipping. How good is that? And as a thank you present to Glenn for lending us his car, he's going home with a free set of these bad boys. Thanks, Glenn, you bloody legend. But by far the biggest complaint from owners about the exterior was that the standard Atlas Batman tyres that were fitted to the car's pre-update are absolutely shocking. Loads of owners mentioned to us that those tyres have shocking traction, especially in the wet, and the whole car just feels really under-tired. But it seems that BYD have admitted fault here because post-update they've binned the Batmans and they've fitted far more sensible tyres, both in terms of adhesion and name, Continentals. And just back on the Batman tyres, if you're going to name a tyre after a superhero, why wouldn't you name it after a superhero that's renowned for adhesion like Spider-Man? What's with Batman? Oh, also, just on the whole pre and post-update thing, the post-update cars, they featured a few minor styling updates, the interior received a few new colours, and the tech and features received an upgrade, but more on all that stuff later in the video. But no matter if you're looking at a pre or a post-update car, since its launch here in Australia in 2022, you've fundamentally had two different models of Atto 3, the standard and the extended range. Both of them feature a single motor front-wheel drive setup, but the extended range, it just has a beefier battery. However, these batteries raise another complaint from owners, and this isn't BYD's fault at all, it's just that the WLTP predicted range is extremely optimistic. Now, this is something we're starting to see across all EVs. In fact, a lot of industry experts are really starting to question the reliability of WLTP's claims. For example, on an extended range Atto 3, the WLTP claim is 420 kilometers, but when you talk to owners, the absolute best they're getting is about 380 kilometers, at worst 320 kilometers. And then when it comes to pricing, these things become even more interesting because, as I'm sure you're aware, EV's ability to hold value seems to be about as buoyant as an anchor. Currently on the used market here in Australia, these things range from about $30,000 to $45,000. But it is important to understand that the car's swapping hands for around about $30,000. We're talking really early models with loads of Ks on them. But in saying that, they were selling for about $48,000 when new, so they've lost over a third of their value. Best case scenario, very low kilometre 2023 extended specs are swapping hands for around about $45,000, and those were asking around about $52,000 when new, so that's just a 13.5% drop in value. So overall, there's a pretty high chance that that could be terrible news if you bought one of these brand new, but then potentially brilliant news if you're buying a used one, because these seem to offer exceptional value for money. Now, you might potentially be looking at leasing one of these to hopefully mitigate some of the loss in value through depreciation. But the problem with that is, especially if you're buying an EV for the environmental impact, is that it means you're going to be swapping new cars every 3 to 5 years, and that's no good for the planet. So if you're buying a car to hopefully be good for the environment, you therefore need to hold on to the car for as long as possible. But when it comes to an EV, sometimes, depending on your situation, this might make absolutely no financial sense at all. Something else to consider is, and look, this is going to vary from person to person, but quite often the insurance premiums on EVs are substantially more than what you'll find on an ICE or hybrid car. For example, I went hunting for quotes for me on this exact car, and the average over about a dozen different insurance companies came out at just a smidge under $2,000 a year. Compare that to a almost exact same spec and year and kilometre hybrid RAV4, and that thing came through at an insurance quote of about $1,500, smidge under. So the thing is, while you 100% are going to be saving money on fuel, depending on your situation, there's every chance that the money you're saving on fuel is just going to be eaten up with insurance and running costs and depreciation. But this all leads into something that unfortunately we're seeing time and time again. There seems to be this bipartisan approach to EVs and ICE cars forming. Like, if you love an EV, well, therefore you have to hate on ICE and hybrid cars, and vice versa. The narrative that we're going to promote, and we really hope this catches on, is that we should all just appreciate the various different power plants for what they can offer us. We can now choose between petrol, diesel, plug-in hybrid, full hybrid, EV, even synthetic fuels and hydrogen might be around the corner, and they all have their various pros and cons. Depending on your scenario, one simply is not better than the other. If you're somebody that's vehemently pro or anti-EV or ICE, get off your bloody high horse, because there is no right or wrong opinion. Sorry about the rant there, and back to the exterior of the car. If you're in the market for one of these and you're trying to identify if the car is a pre or post update, check the Build Your Dreams badge. If this has gone and it's just a BYD badge there, it's a post update. If there's no badge there at all, it shows that the owner has taste. But you want to know something that I and plenty of owners love about the Atto 3? It's the fact that from a design perspective, it doesn't feel the need to shout to the world, hey everyone, I'm special because I'm an EV. The whole design is just quite low key and subtle. As I was being really critical, maybe to the point of being a little bit boring, a bit too sensible, but overall, beautiful looking car. And you want to know why it's just such a handsome car? It's because the guy that's in charge of design for BYD used to be the head of design for Alfa Romeo and then Audi and Lamborghini. And the thing is, the awesome design language continues inside, but more on that in a second. First of all, what goes wrong with these interiors? What are the common complaints? The first one has to do with the immovable headrests on the seats, because according to the owners, this can be literally a pain in the neck. Now look, obviously this will vary depending on your body shape and your posture, but quite a few owners have had to fit like lumbar support cushions to get their body position right so it stops the headrest from pushing their head forward all the time. But for me personally, I don't have any issues with that. In fact, I think the ergonomics in here are absolutely spot on. The seats especially, these things are so comfortable. The squidge to the cushions, it feels really premium, like super high-end seats. I can't believe how good they are. Also, they're at the right amount of supportive as well. This is not a performance car, but if you do have some fun through the corners, you're held in position. Top marks for ergonomics and just seat comfort. Okay, next complaint is that the air conditioning on extremely hot days can potentially struggle a little bit, and this is even if you precondition the car. Preconditioning is the app, you can actually drop the windows a little bit and start the air conditioning before you get in to cool the whole interior of the car down. Actually, just on the clever software stuff, quite a few owners did mention that the infotainment system, a lot of the electronics in here, they can be a little bit glitchy now and again. We're talking things like the boot not locking with the button, or sometimes some of the steering wheel buttons, they don't work, or sometimes the sunroof controls don't work as they should. But like the exterior, generally speaking, the car sorts itself out, or if you restart the car, it fixes it up, or when there's a software update, that fixes everything. Although annoyingly, with one of those software updates, a few owners mentioned that they have now got a problem where if you're listening to music or talking to somebody on a call, when you indicate, it completely cuts the music or who you're talking to out of your life. That's not ideal, but again, I'm sure there's an update coming soon that will fix that. Now, apparently a bunch of 2022 model cars had an issue where the N on the shifter started peeling off, and it could cut you, not badly, but you were not going to bleed. It's just a little bit painful. Good news here though, it's generally covered under warranty. Chances are it's been fixed by now. Next up, a few owners mentioned that the wireless phone charging pad can be a bit hit and miss. And also, like any wireless charging pad, if you're not using it, turn it off, because if you throw your wallet in there and your wallet has your credit card in it, there are reports that the wireless charging pads can play havoc with your credit card. I'm talking things like booking trips to Coachella with the most premium of Airbnb accommodation. It's a nightmare. Then there are complaints about the car not coming with certain features that you'd expect at this price point. We're talking automatic wipers, keyless entry on the passenger side. Just a bit disappointing. Don't get us wrong, the Atto 3 is really well equipped even in the early base models, but especially post 2024. That's because with the 2024 update, the rotating screen grew in size, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto became wireless, and the over-the-air updates meant that there are constantly new features or different visual themes for the screens, or new sounds for parking sensor beeps and indicators. Also, in terms of safety, while it's great that the Atto 3 has a full 5-star NCAP safety rating, it might not all be good news, but we'll elaborate on that more when we go and drive this. And look, obviously there are so many more details about these than just that. And if you do need all the specific details, as well as all the common issues listed out so they're easy to refer to, go to ReDriven.com and check out the free Atto 3 cheat sheet, because it's going to answer all of your questions. Now, aside from the common complaints and what stuff you get, I've got to say, I love this interior. Like, I absolutely love it. Well done, BYD, for taking a bit of a risk in design, but not going too far. I just love the way it looks. I love that it's interesting. Also, I just love how everything feels, especially whatever the hell this material is. I don't know if it's like a neoprene or something, but everything just feels so nice. Also, so many crossover SUVs in this segment just give you a sea of grey and black. They're so boring, but at least this one, the choice of colours and just the overall design, it just makes it feel fun in here. Also, and I completely agree with so many of the owners, unlike other manufacturers, especially with their EVs, where they feel the need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the interiors of their cars, I love that BYD haven't gone too far with this. It's just so intuitive to use. It feels like a normal car to use. For example, the shifter is a normal shifter. It's not some rotary controller or some sticky out knob thing out of the steering wheel. This is great. And yet, they've added interesting design cues like the integrated door handles here, which I know they look weird, but once you've used them 3 or 4 times, it's just, again, it's so intuitive. It makes sense. I love that. And then there's actually using the tech and the features. And I've got to say, this native infotainment system is up there with some of the best I've used. It's so fast and responsive. Also, it's fantastic that it just updates all the time. So owners have mentioned they get in the car and there's more new features and it can look different. And again, I know I keep saying this, but it's just intuitive to use. Even the voice command, which, let's be honest, it can suck in cars costing even 10 times this amount of money. It works so well, and you can control everything from your windows going up and down, your sunroof, your climate control. Everything, pretty much, can be done with voice command. The cameras, they're up there with some of the best we've used in any car at any budget. It's so well thought out. The screens are really, really clear. Even the perspective is completely correct, unlike what you'll find in a Polestar. Also, it has a 3D effect, which you normally only find in, higher-end BMWs and Audis and stuff like that. Most of all, though, I love that it has buttons. BYD, thank you so much. Secondly, thank you for not making it gloss black plastic, which would scratch instantly or just look filthy in no time. They're so intuitive to use. All the major functions you need are just here, or they're on the steering wheel, which also work as intuitively as these. And then if you do want to go delving into menus, they're all on the screen, but just use these instead. This is traditional and it makes sense and it works. Well done, BYD. And then we come to using the interior in terms of practicality. Excellent. Pretty decent sized glove box there. As I said, wireless phone charger there, but there's also spots for your phones down here with USB ports. 2 cup holders, but how good's this? they're height adjustable because you get this little plastic bit to change the height, which is good. Little tray here, which is removable, and this is a huge cubby bin under here. But the highlight are the strings on the door pockets, where you can pretend to be a bass player, which I'm not. I'm a drummer, so I'm sorry to all my bass player friends. That was terrible. But I know what you're thinking. It's all good and well that the interior looks amazing, feels amazing, is practical, and all the tech is fantastic, but come on, it's a BYD. Surely the build quality is pretty rubbish and it's probably got no resilience to it, right? No, that's not the case at all. In fact, when you trawl through the owners groups and forums and whatnot, it seemed to be the complete opposite. See, we actually spoke to a few owners that use these for ride sharing, like Uber drivers. One owner we spoke to actually has a fleet of 7 of these for his business, and he reported that each of those cars have had over 7,000 passengers a year for the 2 years that he's had the cars. They've all got over 100,000 Ks on them, and interior fit and finish and resilience-wise, absolutely outstanding. They basically feel like new cars still. He also stated that after having cars from Volkswagen, BMW, Toyota, Hyundai, a bunch of European and Japanese manufacturers, the BYD has far exceeded any expectations, and in many cases has exceeded the resilience of a lot of mainly the European cars. So basically, forget the internet hype stating that BYD are just crap quality because they're made in China. That is simply not the case. Quite often, these things will not only exceed their direct competition, but will exceed the build quality of cars costing twice as much. Now, here's a fun fact for you. BYD might soon overtake Ford for sales in 2024 here in Australia. And on the subject of Ford, I'm exactly 3 centimeters taller than famed archaeologist Indiana Jones. This is in my driving position, and I tell you what, about the only complaint I have is that the squidge in the back seats is not quite as squidgy in the front seats. This doesn't give you quite the same hug or embrace. Besides that, it's all positives. First of all, ergonomics. Loads of footroom, great amount of knee room, and because of the panoramic roof and the windows and just the colours used in here, it just feels airy and spacious. Interestingly, just on the space back here as well, unlike the Polestar, because it shares its platform with an internal combustion engine car, there's no transmission tunnel hump in here, so even in the middle and the back, loads of footroom. Not that the Atto 3 and the Polestar 2 are direct competitors at all in any way, shape or form. It's just that we reviewed one recently, and the video for that car is down below. Then as far as features and practicality back here, you've got your own air vents, you've got a couple of USB ports, you've got multiple little pockets on the backs of the seat, you've got more bass strings and the cubby bins in the doors, you've also got a pull down armrest with cup holders there. This is such a nice back seat area. If the squidge was that much squidgier, this would be perfect. And then as far as practicality in the boot goes, you might be thinking, that's an okay amount of space, I guess. There's so much more to it than just this. Obviously, you can put your seats down and they do fold flat, but then check this out. You can drop the boot floor to give you even more space. Plus there's cubby holes here. Okay, yeah, there's a massive load lip there, but that's fixed when the boot floor is up. And then underneath the boot, you've got all the space for your cords and whatnot. But while we're on the topic of practicality, we do need to talk about the practical side of living with an Atto 3. See, quite a few owners are pretty underwhelmed at the fact that even the fast charging on these is capped out at 89 kilowatts and AC charging at 7 kilowatts. That's pretty disappointing. Plus, well, at the moment at least, these are not compatible with Tesla superchargers. And then the other issue is, and this is not the car's fault at all, but the current charging infrastructure in Australia absolutely sucks. Yes, there are new chargers coming online all of the time, but honestly, I've lost count of how many times I've turned up to a charger only for it to be out of order, even though the app says it's working, or the charger is shaped down so it just takes an eternity to charge the bloody car, or I turn up somewhere and I've got to wait 3 or 4 people to get to the charger because I haven't got enough range to get any further than that, so I'm hanging around for hours to charge the bloody car. Look, if you're in the fortunate position where you can charge your car at home or at work, ideally from renewable resources, that is absolutely brilliant, but I am so envious. See, I live in an apartment and I generally work from home, so charging a car easily is just not a possibility. And trust me, I've tried so hard to live with multiple makes and models, and I love the concept of living with an EV, but for me, owning an EV is honestly just a massive inconvenience. Just please make sure that your lifestyle accommodates owning an EV before you buy one. Anyway, what are these like to drive? Okay, let's be honest here. As car people, we all love to tinker with our cars, often to a point where we can't leave the bloody things alone. But this brings us to our new mates at Automotive Superstore, where you can shop from over 400,000 products, including car care, infotainment systems, audio, dash cams, lights, brakes, suspension, 4x4 gear, plus a whole lot more. Plus, to make life even easier, if you don't know the specific part that you're after, just type in your rego and it will display all of the parts and accessories suited for your car. Best of all, you can do that completely online from the comfort of your lounge room because they ship Australia-wide. So if your car needs something fixed or upgraded, or maybe you're just in the market for a gift, hit the link below and shop from a huge range of products from Automotive Superstore. Well, the first complaint, and honestly this is one that we're seeing from plenty of owners of cars built after 2022, is that loads of the safety systems are just way too sensitive in their calibrations. For example, loads of Atto 3 owners have complained that the emergency braking is just way too sensitive. Say you're coming up behind a car to overtake it. If the car doesn't like your angle of approach, as you go to overtake, it can just jump on the anchors. That is less than ideal, especially if you've got any traffic following behind you. Some other owners have also had the car jump on the brakes, even though there doesn't seem to be anything in the way, like it's some sort of phantom detection of an obstacle. Also, apparently the lane keep assist can be way too aggressive, especially on bumpy country roads like this. It's almost like the car is trying to savagely take control of the steering wheel. And then there's just the incessant cacophony of beeps and bongs and warning messages. Now look, this is not exclusive to the BYD or the Atto 3 at all. So many owners of new cars are complaining about this beeps and bongs going off all the time, to the point that they're just either ignoring them or they're turning them off as part of their general starting procedure. It really just makes you question their value in the first place. Something that is potentially dangerous, especially if you're a pedestrian, is just how thick this A-pillar is. Plenty of owners have complained about this thing just taking up way too much view. It's a bit of a blind spot. And then there's the fact that there's a bit of wind noise at freeway speeds, and also the suspension. Look, around town it's super comfortable, and on a smooth freeway, no dramas. But when you're on a bit of a bumpy country road like this, it just feels a bit unsettled. It's almost like the struts have left the chat and the car's just relying on the springs to keep it on the ground. It kind of just bounces all over the place a little bit. And then there's the steering, which again around town is just fine, and it does have a fantastic turning circle, but it has very Volkswagen-like steering, and that's not a compliment. It basically has no feel to it, especially when you get up to speed. It's not necessarily a really terrible thing, it takes away from the confidence of driving a little bit. But besides all that, it just does the job of driving really, really, really well, like surprisingly well. Look, it's quiet and refined, and it just does the whole getting you from A to B as effortlessly as possible perfectly, but it feels like more of an appliance than it does a car that you could fall in love with. But the other big concern that plenty of people have with these is what mechanically can go wrong. Well, unfortunately, I can't answer that because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Some of the issues you might see with these, a fairly common one actually is the 12 volt, that's the low voltage battery. Some issues there with the software that are draining the battery, and in some cases it's a faulty battery. A lot of these are getting done under warranty, and it's really not a huge problem anyway. On a slightly more serious issue, there are a few complaints about the drive shaft retaining nut coming loose. Sometimes you can hear it creak when you're going from forward to reverse. Sometimes that nut can just be tightened. In other cases, it's the thread on the nut is damaged, and in worse cases, the thread on the drive shaft can be damaged too, and you can't tighten it. That just means the drive shaft and the nut will have to be replaced. Not hugely common, but yeah, it is a thing. Now, a slightly more concerning issue, but it's not a common problem. There's a few reports of the steering rack or the steering arm just breaking when it hits a big pothole. And some say, well, it's going to break if you hit a huge pothole. But a lot of cars forever have been hitting huge potholes and the steering rack not breaking. But that is a problem that typically would be fixed under warranty. Also, some reports of the electronic park brake not working properly, not engaging or not disengaging. Again, not really common, and again, mostly covered under warranty. Look, overall the drivetrain in these is pretty reliable. Some reports of harsh operation and some vibrations, but overall very few reports of catastrophic failures. From a factory perspective, these things are actually always improving. Mechanically they're improving, the build quality is improving, and so is the software updates as well. They do them frequently and they're usually pretty good. But what is not that great is the after-sales service here. The lack of expertise and the parts availability is an issue. With the lack of expertise in repairing these things, they're farming it out to a third party. In some cases, there's reports of poor servicing and really people just not knowing how to repair them, which is a bit of an issue. But given the popularity of the vehicle, I'm guessing that that will actually improve over time. Now, the battery warranty on these is 8 years or 160,000 kilometres. Now, with some good common sense charging habits, not charging it to 100% and not going below 10%, you should expect a relatively good life out of these things. But what the state of health of these batteries is going to be like after 8 years, well, at this point, just remains to be seen. Now, in saying that, the degradation we're seeing so far is actually pretty good. Now, what I actually have noticed here, now anyone sitting in front of a camera giving these BYDs a fairly good rap often gets accused of being paid by BYD. I can absolutely categorically assure you that is not the case here, at least for us anyway. And to be honest, I was a bit shocked about the reliability of these things. I expected the worst too. BYD are never going to pay us to promote a second-hand version of a car. They want you to buy a new one. But in the case of these, a second-hand one might just be the way to go. So in this case, is buying a used one a better way to go? I'll let Adam explain.
Now, something else to consider before you go racing out to buy a used Atto 3 is what else could you buy instead? From the more traditional manufacturers with arguably larger support networks, you could land yourself in the EV variants of the Kia Niro and the Hyundai Kona, or maybe even a Volvo C40. From the new kids on the block, not the 80s boy band, you have the Chery Omoda E5, the MG ZS EV, and the new Leapmotor C10. And of course, you've got the brand that arguably kicked off the whole EV genre in the first place, Tesla and the Model Y. But as we all know, owning a Tesla can come with its fair share of pros and cons. Which is why we think you should buy a used Atto 3, as long as the car you're looking at ticks all the critical pre-purchase inspection boxes and your lifestyle can accommodate owning an EV in the first place. It's funny, we try so hard in these videos to have no preconceptions before we film and research, but when you're living and breathing cars every day for your job, it is impossible to ignore certain attitudes and opinions. And when it comes to these, being totally transparent, we weren't expecting too much, but we were wrong. The Atto 3 is proving to be a really great little car, and it is absolutely nailing what it's supposed to do better than the competition. However, from what these are asking on the used market, there is another car that could potentially undercut these on insurance costs. It seems to be impervious to depreciation. It has an enormous support network. It offers some of the best build quality in the business. From a reliability standpoint, there's a strong chance it will outlast humanity. It offers loads of the advantages of EV ownership with none of the drawbacks like range anxiety or dealing with our underwhelming charging network. And it's absolutely beautiful to drive. It's the hybrid version of one of these. But we have a question for you. Would you actually buy a BYD, like any of them, or are you determined to stick with the more traditional brands? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.